Hi everyone, welcome to this crowdcast. Welcome to our today's webinar that is called Transcreation. Today our guest is Tanya Quintieri. Hi Tanya.
Hi everybody.
Also on the background you can see Tanya's beautiful daughter and Tanya's husband.
Oh no, we're not married.
Oh, sorry.
But
okay.
But yes, for daddy.
So today we'll be talking about transcreation, but before we start, let me tell a few words about why we're here. We are on Smartcat Academy, which is an effort to bring together the best courses, webinars for translators and translation teams. You can check out Smartcat when you have time. There is a button under the video because it's a cool, free, powerful platform for freelancers and agencies as well. If you are not on it, you can check it out. You can also check out our other webinars, past and upcoming, by clicking on my nickname, which is Smartcat Academy. By the way, my name is Vova. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm head of community at Smartcat. On the left, you see the chat. On the right, you see the chat. On the left, you see the video. And under the video, there are a few tabs that you can use. First of all, there are questions and topics. See what questions are there. So you can upvote the ones you like. You can ask your own and ask others to upvote. We will get to them after Tanya finishes her intro presentation. So also there is a polls tab, which you can use to answer some of the questions that we asked you. Already a lot of replies there. So that's it. Having said that, I give the mic to Tanya. So Tanya, tell us a few words about yourself and about Transcreation, maybe.
Okay, thank you, Vova. Good to be here. A few words about myself, geez. Well, he already said my name. My name is Tanya Quintieri. The name doesn't quite reveal it, but I'm a US American, and currently I'm residing in the beautiful city of Prague. Although today the weather is kind of nasty, but anyway. Yeah, I'm a translator. I've been in the business since end of 2002, beginning 2003. It was kind of a process of me getting into freelancing. I specialize in marketing exclusively for IT companies and companies, that are into innovative stuff like Industry 4.0 and such things. And I work with marketing agencies. And in the process, I, of course, do what some of you might call transcreation. And I say what some of you might call it because ever since the term popped up, there's been like a lot of discussions, about what is transcreation. Is it just a word, a buzzword? That really just means localization or adaptation. So I've prepared some slides that will walk us through about the first 10-15 minutes. Just a quick question from my side, or I'd like to ask you to really add your questions to the question section. I don't want you walking away from this webinar thinking that you didn't get out of it what you signed up for. So if in an hour and a half, you have the feeling you've wasted your time, not my fault. You now have the chance to add your questions, your remarks, share your knowledge. And if at any point, and I'm sure Vova is fine with that, you feel that you want to join us on screen and maybe share an example from your daily work, please feel free to speak up. Okay, so let's get into my little presentation. I need to find the right window. Here we go. And maybe we should start with the first slide. Okay, so like we said, we're talking about transcreation and understanding what transcreation really is. First, I wanted to look at how some other people define transcreation, and the first place to look for, obviously, is Wikipedia. And they say that it's the process of adapting a message.
I'm interrupting you, but I think we don't see your screen right now, at least I don't.
Okay, that's weird because it's showing me that it is.
Now I see it, but we don't see you. Okay, I just pressed the wrong buttons. I will now press the right ones, and we will see both you and your presentation. Okay, sorry for interrupting you. Please go on.
No problem. No problem. Okay, so back to Wikipedia's definition of transcreation. They define it as the process of adapting a message from one language to another while maintaining its intent, style, tone, and context. Now, I'd say that's pretty close. And then we have one definition by Lionbridge saying that transcreation is the process of recreating precise brand content for multilingual consumption. Now, the word that I like here is brand, but I still don't think, at least for my definition, that this really conveys what transcreation is. Then there's Lingo24. They say it's about taking a concept in one language and completely recreating it in another language. That might work sometime. And then there's a really critical voice that I read, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, by I guess he's an agency owner. His LinkedIn profile says he is the CEO of a translation service provider. He says that transcreation is the term used to refer to marketing translations. The term is catchy, trendy, romantic, and a big fat lie. Now, I don't quite agree, and you'll see why when I share my definition. The way I see transcreation is that it serves one purpose: to help shape a brand's image in a way that will make it easy for their target audience to identify with the brand and their products or services. If you want to identify with something, that always involves some kind of emotion. And emotion is where I see the difference when we differentiate between translation, localization, adaptation, and transcreation. Now, we all know that translation is translating a text from language A to language B. Localization, on the other hand, is more about the content. Think of video games that are localized, maybe to adapt to a story. Or think of buttons and forms, etc., on a website. Or maybe even the way that the characters go, from left to right, right to left, whatever. Then we have adaptation, which basically transports the meaning from language A to language B. And then we have transcreation that translates an emotion that the brand, the company, whatever, wants to translate for another market, another target audience. I want to tell you about some examples that I've come across of transcreation, and I'll start with 3 really big brands. Obviously, they didn't have a single translator do these, but a whole team, mainly consisting of market research people who work on these. For one, the baby is about to leave the house, so it should stop. For one, we have Barilla. And this example I heard from a colleague who does translations into Italian. Her name is Alessandra Martelli. And she first talked about transcreation at a seminar it was a talk that she gave, I think, in Budapest in 2014. That's when I heard it the first time. And I really like that example because, it's about food and we all are into food. So about 15 years ago, Barilla had this claim that they wanted to transcreate for different markets in Europe. The Italian claim focused on, dinner being a meal that's shared by the entire family, because Italians are family people and they like to eat together at table. So the emphasis of the claim was put on actually sharing the meal together. While for the German audience, after doing all their market research and everything, they found that German customers would place more emphasis on the quality of the product. So the claim in German read something totally different, but still it drew in their target audience because it resonated with what they were looking for. Another great example of transcreation is the campaign, I think it was in 2013 or 2014 by Coca-Cola, when they started printing first names on their cans and bottles. That idea originally came from their headquarters in Australia, where they started selling Coke cans with, I think, the 150 most common names in Australia. And the concept was adapted by Coca-Cola in China, whereas they didn't use first names, they used the most common nicknames that people have for each other. And in the UK, that pretty much fell together with the birth of Prince William's and Kate's first son. So I can't really recall what the cans in the UK said and the bottles, but it had something to do with the birth of their child. Also, a typical case of transcreation is the I'm Loving It campaign by McDonald's, where it always had to do with the love for their product, but on different markets in the Arabian countries and in the Asian countries and European countries. It always had a slightly different twist to it because people simply have a different relationship to food, depending on their culture, depending on many things, from eating habits to God knows what. Then I have two examples that actually come from my own work. The Merry Christmas example is quite a fun one. It's a case where I transcreate it without really knowing it. I have an IT client that I've been working for. Actually, that was my very first client back in 2003. And come December 2003, they asked me to translate their annual Christmas letter that they send out to their clients. Now, throughout the year, as I was getting to know the company, I learned that they also have clients in Dubai. So when the CEO secretary sent me that letter, I was thinking, well, they can't go and wish their client in Saudi Arabia Merry Christmas. Doesn't make any sense. So I sent them two versions. The first one that was intended for clients who live in countries where they actually celebrate Christmas. And the second one was a bit more generalized, talking about, end of the year is a season for us to reflect and to be grateful for things achieved and, to look forward to the new year. And oddly enough, none of their employees had thought about this, but they were very grateful. Now, of course, this didn't really do anything for their client in Dubai. They weren't, it's not like they were like, oh, thank you for being so considerate and not wishing us Merry Christmas. But on the other hand, had they sent that letter, their clients in Dubai might have, thought they're inconsiderate. And then we have Manuela. Manuela. Yeah, that was a funny story. Again, a German software company, and I was translating their website, and they were using a plugin where when somebody would surf their website for like longer than 2 minutes or so and was looking around for things, there was this little pop-up with a customer service avatar asking, is there anything I can help you with, whatever. And the avatar introduced herself as, hello, I'm Manuela. Now, this was a project where I did the project management, and the website was translated into several languages. Among them, Spanish. And the translator came back to me and was like, Tanya, I'm not sure we should call the avatar Manuela and have her introduce herself in Spanish as, hola, I'm Manuela, simply because that might have a really weird connotation. So for the Spanish website, they thankfully changed the name of the customer service avatar. An example that you maybe have heard of, and no, this is not some kind of joke on Spider-Man. Marvel Comics was going to sell their Spider-Man comics in India. Now, we all know that there's millions of people in India, so the market is really, really big. And they decided to transcreate the entire storyline. So the Spider-Man introduced on the Indian market actually wears Indian style attire. I'm not even sure what that is called. Maybe some of you know, let me know in the comments. And he was born in India, and the entire storyline is adapted to the Indian market. So that is maybe one of the more known examples where a company really, really put effort into transcreating their content. Transcreation also includes, and this is something that you will also find in adaptation and localization, that you have a look at images to see how they reflect. But this doesn't only include images and copy, it's also about, the font that is used, maybe, that might not come across well, I don't know. Extreme example, I'm sure there's countries where you never want to use Comic Sans. Is there any country that likes comic? Not sure, but yeah. It's basically everything that adds to the visual appearance, creating any kind of emotion. Visual and audio, of course. And this photo I came across, I think like 2 weeks ago on Facebook. I saw a sponsored post. And now I'm a foodie, so I like anything that's designed for foodies. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's a pair of headphones that come in a case that looks like a macaron. And I thought, oh, this is cool. And I clicked on the ad and opened the website, and it looked really, really neat at a first glance. And I thought, 16 euros or $16.95, whatever, for a pair of headphones, that isn't really a great brand. It's kind of a lot, but hey, it's a great design, and I'd sure love having that in my purse. And then I looked at the photo and I was like, oh gosh, people, you just really messed up. And I'm pretty sure you can't see it here, but if I go to my next slide, maybe you can make it out. Can you see the fingernail of the lady holding that macaron? And I'm not sure if this really has to do with the fact that I'm a woman, but more with the fact that, like, I have an eye for anything that goes into marketing, and her fingernails are not nice. I mean, the nail polish is coming off, and I started discussing it with a couple of colleagues in the, I think, Marketing for Translators group on Facebook. And some were like, well, maybe this is a product that is marketed to, young girls that like the grunge look or whatever. I'm not sure. If this company were to approach me and ask me to translate their website, I'd probably advise them to take better product pictures where the person's fingernails look nice, because, I mean, obviously this is not a brand product. It's a product that lives solely off its design. And people who will jump onto that design, they will have some kind of standards in terms of, being groomed and fashionable, whatever. So yeah, I'd probably tell them not to use that photo. Oh gosh, that was already it. I promised to keep this presentation kind of short because I really, really want to get to all your interesting questions. I'll just stop sharing this and come back on screen with you guys. And hope Vova will join me so I'm not up here all by myself.
Yeah, I'm just a second clicking the buttons here. Oh, and now it's just me. Okay, now there's two of us. So that was pretty interesting for me, at least. I feel sorry for the guys who made the last picture, for the guy who made it, because he probably didn't make it to, well, he was probably screwed by his boss, but anyway, or her boss.
Maybe.
So you mentioned several examples which were about transcreating some slogans, and that's why I wanted to jump right away to one question that actually I asked, but it was upvoted a lot of times. So how should transcreation projects be charged? Because obviously you cannot charge "I'm loving it" as 3 or 4 words.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a little story. I think before we talk about how much we charge for transcreation, we need to really generally ask ourselves what our purpose is as translators and how far we want to be involved in our client's success. Because 10 days ago or so, I met with a friend here in Prague. He's a project manager, and he brought a friend of his along, a translator, and he told me that she charges by the page. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So at some point, of course, as always, we started talking about money, and she asked me, how do you charge your clients? And I said, well, I charge by the hour, generally. And she's like, how is that going to work? And I'm like, well, you know, I can't charge by the page because sometimes I only get a claim or you know, a short paragraph to put on a new brochure or whatever. And I'll be sitting there 3-4 hours doing my research and working on it and honing it and talking to the client. I mean, how am I going to charge that by the page? And she says, yeah, but why don't you just translate it? And I said, well, because if I just translate it, it's not going to be of any value to my client. And she says, but that's not your problem. And I was like, okay, we clearly have a different mindset. So when we're talking marketing translations and when we're talking, you know, transcreation and localization, we're not just translating, and we're not just transcreating for the heck of it. We're doing it to make, like I said in my definition, we're doing this to create value for the client in terms of their target audience being able to identify with them as a brand or with their product or with their services in order for them to actually make money, so that the effort that they have or the expenses they have with us, at some point they pay off. Now that said, of course you cannot charge for transcreation or even for marketing translation, in my opinion, by the word or the line or page or whatever. It's going to happen by the hour. And in some cases, I'm not sure if everybody saw the poll. I had this option, should be charged by any of the above plus usage rights.
Yeah, what was that? Because I wasn't sure.
Right. So when I translate claims for clients, and you know, it's the kind of claim where I really have to dig in and do my own market research and look into demographics and stuff like that. And it's really hard work and it's hard to come up with. I will charge them usage rights. Just like any copy editor charges usage rights for their stuff, or a graphic designer charges usage rights for a logo or icons or whatever. It's a piece of unique text that I will never ever be able to use for another client. So, you know, it doesn't matter if it's in my TM. Well, for that client, yes, but it's not going to matter for other clients. And it's something that's going to create I would almost say a non-material value, because it's going to be the face of that brand in the country that they're selling. So yes, I charge by the hour, plus some when applicable.
Is it somehow this usage right? Is it somehow volume based, or so the more they use it, the more they pay, or is it just a lump sum?
It really depends. Like when I do website content or do a brochure or transcreate the subtitles for some image video they have, then I'll just do it by the hour. Although I won't usually tell them how many hours I plan to work on it. I just give them a project sum. When I do apply usage fees for usage rights, that does appear as an extra item on my invoice, or before that on my quote, whatever. So
as a fixed sum.
Usually it's a fixed sum. The thing is with direct clients, and I really don't know what it's like to work with agencies because I never got into that. The thing with direct clients is they don't really care what the unit is of the price that you give them. They just want to know how much it's going to cost, and ideally what they will have for that, what they get out of it.
So you say that you don't even tell to them in advance how much it can cost. So when when awarding some work to you, they don't, they cannot even anticipate what price will be.
Oh,
there.
sure, sure. Like I will know, okay, this is going to be like 3, 4, 5 hours, and then I'll just take my hourly rate and put that together and add some just in case. And I will tell them this will come out to about, I don't know, 500 euros, give or take 10%.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you run significantly above this, do you just call them and agree on something, some more? I guess it requires a lot of trust between the client and the translator. But well, maybe it's always required, but in such a case, I think that's the biggest problem with for clients to be charged by the hour, because they never know if the translator is actually charging whatever he or she spent.
Well, I usually tell them beforehand that, and I'm sure that here my years in the business helped me a lot with this. I usually pretty much get the number right. If not, then it's usually because something went wrong during the briefing, because the client didn't give me information that I needed, and I wasn't aware at that point that I would need it. So it's all about the preparation of the project. I cannot imagine doing a transcreation project without actually talking to my client on the phone and getting a feel for what it is they're trying to achieve with the transcreation or with the work that I deliver. So it's to me, it's a very one-on-one situation. The only time when I would accept or expect a middleman is when it's like something really huge, right? Where I myself can't do it, or where I don't have enough insight for the market that they're aiming for. So, but then it wouldn't be a translation agency. It would be a marketing agency that has, I don't know, a subsidiary in the target market, or maybe even sits in the target market themselves, and they just need a translator to work with them on the message that they're creating.
It's interesting that you mentioned agencies, because, for instance, if one brand wants to transcreate, also, guys, there are some questions in the chat. I will return to them once we are done with this. So, if they want to transcreate in several languages at once, and so they will have to look for transcreators in these pairs. So it's naturally a business opportunity for companies to present themselves as transcreation agencies, or is it just that marketing agencies do the same? And so how is it structured? Can there be such transcreation agencies?
Sure, why not? Maybe, now that you say it, maybe that's basically what I do, because I would say meanwhile, about 40 to 50% of my projects are not just into my language, but I do them for all kinds of different languages, where I do the project management and I make sure that the translators get the briefings they need, where I'm just the point of contact for the client. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely a viable business model, I'd say. Not that I market myself that way, but it's just what happens when your clients grow.
I mean, it's a buzzword. Why not?
Actually, and I'm sorry that it's a buzzword. And this is where I'd like to put in some food for thought. Transcreation is nothing new. I mean, the earliest reference that I found was sometimes in the 1960s, where the term was used to describe exactly what we're talking about today. The thing is, it has now, through the internet and through the way that companies market their products, everything going global, and
it didn't buzz that much back then, probably.
Right. And now everybody's kind of hopping onto that bandwagon, but it's really nothing different from what we've done 50, 60 years ago.
It's interesting, because another question also I had was, how mature is transcreation as a field, as an industry, as a profession?
I think with the size of the customer, the team that offers the transcreation or the transcreational process is going to grow as well. the larger the brand, the more they need, the more you will need people involved in the process that have nothing to do with translation. And you know, the person in charge of the web design is just one of those people. We're talking about specialists who know their demographics by heart, who have their eyes on trends that are emerging. These are the people who are going to exhibitions where you see future technologies, maybe on a smaller scale, but who actually have a mindset to see the bigger picture and who see where things are going. And I think that's just a capacity that one translator cannot have. So the companies that I translate for, and somebody asked this in one of the questions, she said that she wanted to win small businesses as her clients for Transcreation. I think right now that's probably the only way to go. I can't think of an example where you have a big company like Coca-Cola and they would work with just one translator, obviously. So yeah, we're talking about small businesses, and that's not a bad thing because, you know, with all the possibilities, again, that the internet offers and that the way that our working environment overall has changed with all these little startups, and you have these small disruptive bootstrapped companies who, you know, they maybe have just one CEO and perhaps somebody who does the coding in the background, but there's so many of them out there, and they're not going to hire some huge company like Scholz and Friends, which is like one of the largest marketing agencies in Germany, because they simply don't have the funds. But there's nothing wrong for companies that small, you know, that still do a lot of stuff in-house or maybe with one or the other freelancer. Those are perfect clients for a freelance translator to offer transcreation.
That's an interesting point, something to think about for a lot of us, perhaps. Coming back to the questions in the chat, Magnet asked, do you charge usage rights per year? Is it for renewal, such as talent in commercials?
It really depends. I'm trying to think where I published this, but I wrote a pretty extensive piece. No, actually, it was in one of my newsletters where I really, you know, took a deep dive into the subject of charging for usage rights and how to figure them out.
We can share a link afterwards to the audience.
Sure. For myself, there's like 4 components that go into usage rights. The first one is, are we talking about exclusive use? In 99% of cases, yes, it's going to be exclusive. So only this client can use, or the other way around, I cannot sell the same piece of work or same wording to another client. We have a timely restriction. In most cases, companies will opt for unlimited time. We have the means of publication. So if a company wants to use something just for a print brochure, one-off time at an exhibition, it's going to be cheaper than if they want to use that same piece of copy on their website, on their brochures, you know, forever and ever. And the fourth was, I'd have to look into my papers.
Okay, we will share it afterwards. And
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, so those clients who come to me for one-off or event-specific things, or just for a single campaign, they will pay, of course, a smaller fee. And if they then decide to use that again, they will have to pay those usage rights again, if it's, you know, limited in any way. But in most cases, they will opt for exclusive without limitation and the whole thing. But now you might ask yourself, if that's not going to be a recurring cost, why sell it in the first place? It's also a great mean to actually make them understand the value of the service that they're buying. Like, you know, this is not just a translation. There's no such thing as just a translation, but this is more than a translation. This is something that will shape your brand, and that will do a lot for how they perceive you.
Okay. Another question was, what's your language pair?
Mine?
Yeah.
German, English.
Okay. Just to answer that. So the most popular question we actually had, and think what must be discussed, is what skills are needed for transcreation. And I will also add to this one other question, because somewhere I read that a transcreator is more of a writer or a copywriter than a translator. So the writing skills are more important for a transcreator than translating skills. So what would you say to both of these questions?
I can tell you what skills I have, and maybe add some of trans creators that I've worked with who have totally flashed me. My background is in marketing, specifically in marketing for IT and software companies. So that's where my area of specialization comes from. That is why I understand those markets. Before I translated full-time as a freelancer, I worked for software and IT companies, and I was in charge of really huge budgets. You know, we went to huge fairs, exhibited there. We had major clients that were active worldwide. So to me, it was natural that this would be my field where I want to specialize in, and that I would find my ideal client in that market. So I know quite a lot about marketing, although I do have to admit, like the last 5 years or so, even that has changed a lot. So I have to do a lot of CPD to stay on top of things. I need to read TechCrunch on a regular basis, all that, you know, stuff, and visit fairs, things like that, just to stay on top of it, to know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I think a translator should, or a trans creator should know their way around in marketing, maybe even advertising. You should be able to read demographic statistics, stuff like that. I think it is of not crucial importance, but great importance that, or it would be ideal if you lived in the target language market. Now, obviously, I don't. Right now, I live in the Czech Republic. I don't speak a word Czech. Well, people maybe, but definitely not enough to know my way around. And but I do, you know, I try to stay on top of things by going back to the States and by reading a lot of stuff from the States. I take part in virtual conferences, things like that. So it is a piece of work to stay on top of things, but to me, it's definitely worth it just because I love the topic, and I love what I do for a living. And as for other skills you should have, yes, definitely you should have a thing for writing. A very, very important aspect to me is that you, as the person translating or transcreating a brand's message, is that you can take yourself back to a point where there's not your handwriting all over it. It has to be 100% your client. And it has to be 100% your client in a way that will appeal to their target market. So none of the copy that's out there, you know, that came from my fingertips, I don't think you would find the Tanya flavor in it, because it just has nothing to do in the copy created.
Well, that's interesting, because it's also probably what's required for translation as well, but maybe for transcreation even more so. Wearing masks, playing roles, and associating yourself from yourself, something like this. It can be, by the way, hazardous for mental health. I read it. If you dissociate too much.
You know, that would explain a lot, but let's not get into that.
Okay, a couple of people asked the question. You already touched on that in your intro presentation, but maybe we could revisit it. So how is exactly transcreation different from marketing translation? Because in marketing and translation, usually the goal is the same. You want to have some emotions from the readers. So is there any specific?
Marketing translation to me is a much more you know, it's a broader field. But that's a good question. I just think marketing translation is more strategic because it factors in things that don't necessarily have to do with a brand's image, whereas transcreation, to me, always has to do with a brand's image. Let's think of different forms of marketing translation, or different types of marketing itself. I mean, there's things like ambush marketing, there's digital marketing, there's email marketing, there is God knows what. So marketing comprises a lot more than what meets the eye in terms of, hey, this company has a great website, they're doing good marketing. No, that's not marketing. Marketing is much, much more, and I'm not even talking about social media marketing.
Well, yeah, transcreating social media is also maybe one idea that could catch up.
I don't think so. A couple of my clients have tried that, but in the end, it was cheaper for them to have people actually sitting in the countries doing the social media marketing, because social media marketing is so fast. The content that you put out with social media marketing, and I'm not talking about, you know, the blog posts you write, but I'm talking about actual status updates on Twitter and, you know, taking care of the Facebook accounts, the business pages of each of the countries. It just is cheaper to actually have people sitting there, so-called community managers, who take care of those pages. Transcreation or translation in general is not always the best solution.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that we should keep in mind. Okay.
And since I want my clients to prosper, right, and I want them to grow, and I want them to, you know, I'm not going to advise them to do something that they can have cheaper and better.
I know. I had cases, you know, when guys gave me something to translate, and I just understood that it was so irrelevant to the audience that they were planning to distribute it to, that it should be just either rewritten from scratch or just rethought the whole idea, maybe, instead of writing letter about this. They, like you said, with this Merry Christmas thingy, because it's the Merry Christmas is kind of obvious, but sometimes people think that some other countries, people in other countries would be interested in some things, but comes out they are not at all. And when you see that, it's, I had quite a lot of examples when I said that you would better not do this translation at all.
Yeah.
Happens. Okay, would you recommend any books, articles, resources on transcreation? And also Anna asked about cultural differences in general.
To be honest, I haven't read any.
Maybe resources, websites, podcasts.
Oddly enough, some of the really big agencies, they have some really nice white papers on transcreation, just where you can get an idea about what transcreation is about to different types of clients. Like the examples that I had for the definitions, Lionbridge, Lingua 24, there's so many out there. And then there's that common sense, no, advisory. What is it called?
Common Sense Advisory.
Thank you. Yeah, they have quite a few publications on transcreation.
Something specific, because what you mentioned are probably something of some sort of introductory white papers about what transcreation is and how to approach it.
You know, if you have a local association in your country, I'm sure, I mean, almost every association is offering some kind of programs about transcreation, about the how-to, about, you know, workshops. Check out Alessandra Martelli's blog. That's, I think, MTM Translations or something like that. I'll be happy to share a link. I'm sorry, I'm reading questions here at the same time.
I will add them the question list so you can.
Okay, great. So yeah, there's translators who really specialize in this field, and they share knowledge. They share courses in different Facebook groups. Might want to look into those. If you like, I can try to put together a resource list. And
I think it will be just awesome if you have time for that.
Yeah, give me a couple of days. Maybe I can include it in my next newsletter because I think my readers would be quite interested in that too. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I would know what I'm looking for, and I'm pretty sure I could evaluate whether or not that resource is valuable. So sorry, I can't answer that question right now, but I'll really be happy to put that together for you.
Okay, great. So about these questions that came up, one question was about how much do you actually charge, or do transcreators actually charge? We now already know that it should be charged per hour, but what's the typical range for charging for transcreation?
There is no tactical range. I charge flat 129 euros per hour, no matter if I transcreate or only translate. I know that's it sounds like a fairly high amount, but it's really not.
Something to strive for many.
It's really not, because if I break it down, like when I translate for my oldest clients, right, where I'm really, really good, where I'm in the subject, where I don't have to do any research, where I can just translate down, that averages out to maybe like 8 or 10 cents per word sometimes, depending on what I'm translating. Whereas for other clients, it would average out to, I don't know, 50 cents per word. One time I charged a client 3 hours for a claim that consisted of 4 words. So, it really depends. And at the end of the day, we're talking billable hours, right? And I'm a translator who only works like 3-4 hours maybe a day. That includes, doing my business marketing, doing my invoicing, doing translating itself. And I have to earn that kind of money in order to make a living off of it. So it's really all relative. I mean, if I didn't have a child, and, if I wasn't so active on social media, because I'm also somewhat of a community manager, all kinds of crazy things with translators and for translators, then I'd probably, be able to sell my services more because I could charge less per hour. So
anyway, yeah. I think it's a good good rate. Anyway, I think you don't complain, or do you, about it? So I think when people start, you will be looking at maybe some. If you're just starting out, you'll be looking at smaller figures. But I think in any case, it's some number of tens of euros or dollars per hour, something like that.
But Vova, it's really just simple math. I mean, if a single person out there who doesn't have any other commitments, works 8 hours a day and they charge, I don't know, 30 euros an hour, at the end of the month, they're still making more than me because I only bill 3-4 hours per day. So.
Yeah, that's clear. What I mean is, if you are just you're a good transcreator, obviously you have a lot of clients who come back to you, and obviously if someone is just starting out, they have to spend some time to reach the same amount. Or what do you think? Do you think that if it costs for you like 120, even if you're just starting out, you anyway should strive to find clients for this rate?
No. The hourly rate should always depend on what you need to have at the end of the month. And then you divide that by the hours that you can actually bill, right? So before I had the baby, right, and I would have an 8-hour working day, I did the math, and per month, I was only able to actually bill 112 hours because I wouldn't work on weekends. I wouldn't work more than 8 hours. And within those 8 hours, I would do my CPD. That would factor in my sick days per month, my vacation days, broken down per month. So if you need, I don't know, 3,000 net at the end of the month, your experience shouldn't matter. The thing is, if I translate 1,000 words, right, and I need half an hour, and the inexperienced translator needs 3 hours, it's still going to cost the client the same because the inexperienced translator takes longer, right? So my advantage is that I offer to work faster because I know where to do my research, etc. It's really just a question of math. There's just no way, unless you're exploiting yourself, that I can imagine that, at least in the European countries and probably also in the US, there's just no way that charging 30 euros an hour could be enough. I mean, I have no idea about the cost of living in other parts of the world, but because that factors in, that factors in as well. But if I'm charging a client in Italy, I don't know, 129 euros per hour, why should not a translator in India be charging the same amount? He's doing the same work, right? So it's more about where is your client rather than where are you?
What if the client, for the client, it's quite a conundrum or dilemma if he has to choose between a translator living in a high-income country and a translator living in a low-income country. Because nowadays there's no really difference in the technical regard. I mean, we're all on the internet. Right. But I think it's a big topic for a separate discussion anyway.
Just let me add one more thing to that. We cannot have the same discussion about prices today as we had, let's say, 5 years ago. The market changes, our possibilities change. So yes, I do think that's a topic for another discussion, and we need to, when we do discuss that, we need to factor in the changes that the market is going through.
That's an idea for one of the next webinars, maybe.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, but okay, we'll see. We had a question here that is more practical. I really liked it. How does the usual transcreation process look like, beginning with the brief? So what are the typical stages involved? What questions to ask? What do you need to know from the client? What research do we have to make?
Okay, usually I will ask them, first of all, to understand what their objectives are. The next step is to really fully understand their product, not the technical stuff, but what pain points does their product or service address for their customers. Then, of course, I want to know, have they already done their market research in that country or not? Is that something that I will have to take care of? Is that something where I will have to get in touch with people who are on site? Then, of course, I will want to see all the materials that they already have in their source or in their home country. I will try to get metrics from them or analysis on how their materials have performed so far, just so I have a benchmark where we need to go with the materials that I will translate. Often enough, they actually send me reports, like if a website is involved, they will send me their Google Analytics reports after, I don't know, 3-4 weeks after my work has been online, because of course I need to learn from that too, and I can only learn from real data. And then, then the project management stuff, which is basically the same for any kind of job a translator does. Preferences in file formats. Oh gosh, just getting them to talk about what it is they really want. I think that's the key. And then, it's just like when a graphic designer does a logo for you, he sends you his draft and you sit over it and you talk and you're like, okay, this is why I made this decision. And, maybe the client will say, well, that's not going to take us where I want to go. And it goes back and forth. So
yeah, when you were saying all this, I came to my mind that it's a lot like a design work, probably in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
Okay, we are already 55 minutes into the webinar. I don't know, Tanya, do you have further plans after the 5 minutes end? Because we have a lot of questions still.
It's okay. I'm here.
Let's just go top down. How do we make a balance between being creative and respecting the original style and tones, especially if the original content doesn't work in a particular culture?
Okay, like I said earlier,
simple formula, yeah.
Like I said earlier, one of the skills involved is that you're able to take yourself back. And that's what I ask of the clients though too, because sometimes I will present them a piece of work and they will be like, well, no, that's not what I wanted to say. And then, you know, I'm brutally honest when I talk to clients, you know, and I will tell them it's not about the message you want to put out there. It's about the message that you want your audience to perceive. And it's, you know, marketing is not about the sender. Marketing is always about the recipient. And that's where you get the results. So, yeah, so that's where I try to kind of consult my clients. I don't like the word educate.
Okay, you said you will share a simple formula about this. Was it that?
That was precisely it, telling the clients that it's not about him sending the message or them sending the message, but it's about their audience. And when you look at it from that angle, you know, you get totally different ideas.
Yeah.
It's when you put yourself into the audience's shoes or into the person who might be spending, I don't know, 6,000 euros on a pair of handmade skis. Put yourself in their position and then.
What if you had to send these skis to Africa, for instance? What would you have to put as the message?
If I wanted to sell skis to Africa?
It's a question to you, but I mean, it's one of the challenges that a transcreator can face.
I wouldn't do that.
Or call to Newcastle, I don't know.
I mean, how can I ever be successful with something like that? I mean, now if you would say, sell skis to Dubai, I'd be like, oh yeah, but.
Can work.
Or we would have to bring the mountain to the prophet. And maybe, you know, team up with a ski resort that markets to rich people in Africa. I don't know.
Bring profit to the prophet, right?
Yeah.
So let me see. I will skip my own questions. How do we know that a content should be transcreated rather than translated? Because translation agencies always ask for translation, and sometimes you find that it needs to be transcreated. How to explain, well, not only agencies, perhaps also direct clients, how to explain to them?
Well, I guess if you're working through an agency, it's probably going to be hard, you know, to get in touch with the client behind the agency. I guess that depends on how well you work together with the agency and how transparent they are about their processes. But with direct clients, it's fairly easy because, you know, we're talking about businesses that want to run profitable. And the clients that I want to attract and that I want to have in my portfolio, they will more than happily spend $100 wisely than, you know, throw away $10. Just you know, to get a relationship.
So it's once again about convincing them that they don't need some kind of job translation or transcreation, but they need something that will work for the audience that this content is intended to. If it's transcreation, then so be it.
And it's often with new clients that I will, you know, they will send me, I don't know, a Word document, and they'll be like, hey, we took this text from our website and we'd really like to have you translate it. And can you send us a quote? And I'll send them a quote. And if I don't get the chance to call them, I'll be like, okay, here's a quote for a translation. But I would like to advise you, there's some elements on your website, they need a bit more than translation if you want it to work. And that usually does the trick.
I wanted to say something, but I got distracted by the chat. We had a question from Magnet that you said that we will answer to them. What are the most important aspects of transcreation for different territories, cultural aspects? Even though large parts of the world speak English, how does one transcreate for particular cultures? And the second part of the question, can one transcreate for a particular culture even if one does not live there or know it as a native? Any tips and tricks
Well, we covered that earlier.
Okay.
I'm hearing an echo. Let me see. It's 129 euros now. But yeah.
Sorry,
Wait.
I'm just...
Is it better
Just
if I
remember.
take out my headphones?
It was fine for me. It was fine for me.
Is it better?
For me, it was fine and it's fine now. So I don't know. Maybe guys, you can write in the chat.
Now I don't hear you. Awesome. I'm sorry for this little technical glitch. Let's see if this works now. I never get the left and right correct.
I think we have the same headphones, but we wear them differently.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Okay. So where were we?
Okay. So where we were, I completely not remember, but we were about do you research cultures other than the one you live in, and can you actually transcreate for cultures that you don't know too well?
I wouldn't advise doing that. Like if one of my German clients would ask me to prepare copy for, let's say, the UK market, I'd be like, nope, not going to happen, because I don't understand the UK market, because it's not, I've been there once to do a seminar, but I've never lived there. I'm not immersed in their culture. Having said that I'm a foodie, I'm not really into British cuisine. I'm not sure if that, qualifies, but yeah.
So it's very interesting, because a lot of people wouldn't even think that being a native speaker of, it's not about speaking, right? It's more about the cultural aspect, but some people would think that if you're a native speaker of English, then you would easily translate for the UK market, even if living in the US. So it's not the case.
Yeah. Actually, most of my clients are, in fact, German, Swiss, Austrian clients who market to the European market. There's some clients that specifically address the US market. In those cases, I always get colleagues involved who actually live there, because I've lived in Europe for 23 years, and traveling back ever so often really doesn't do the trick. I mean, it helps. I probably still know more about the US market than someone who's never lived there. I mean, I lived there half my life. But nowadays, most of my clients, given the size, I mean, many of my clients are small companies. And so they are just starting out. And usually English is the language they will use to tap into other markets. And then once they see, okay, the Italian market is interested in our product, and we, people are visiting our website from Italy, then they will think about, can I have this in Italian, or I don't know, Turkish, or French, etc. So.
Okay, so I think we can be wrapping it up. I have just one question that I think will be a good, how do you say that? I don't know. So that will finish it off nicely. Is what advice would you give to people who want to start as transcreators? Let's say they are translators right now, but they want to start transcreating. So how do you actually get started? How do you A, look for clients, B, develop the skills? Maybe this one was already answered, but how do you find your first transcreation client?
Many translators don't like this answer, but I think a really good way to find clients for transcreation is when you look at international fairs taking place in your home country. Look up the websites of those fairs well in advance, and check the list of exhibitors. And if there's exhibitors from the source country of your language, get in touch with them beforehand. Ask them if they need any marketing materials translated or transcreated, in the run-up to the exhibition. That's a good way to find companies. Also, of course, you can go there and no. I mean, it's not a good idea to go to a fair or an exhibition and walk up to a booth and say, hey, I see you translated into my language, into my native language, but your copy could really use improvement. I wouldn't do that. I'd probably go there and say, hey, I'm a translator. I specialize in renewable energies. Let's say you're at a fair for renewable energies. And I'm just here today to do some market research, you know, and stay on top of things, and so I can deliver good value to my clients. And then usually they will start talking to you. You know, you don't go there selling. And then afterwards, I don't know, like a week or two afterwards, you ask them, you send them an email and say something like, hey, so remember we talked briefly, I was just wondering if you would like to share your outcome of the fair with me. That would really help me a lot in evaluating the CPD I did there, or whatever. And then just see, you know, if you show interest in them and they realize that you know something about their product, it's easier to get them hooked. If not for this year, maybe for next year or whenever they come back to exhibit.
I think, by the way, the same strategy will work for not only for physical contact, but even when talking to someone online. So, as we already said in the previous webinar, don't try to sell, try to show interest in their field. Yeah. I found for myself that's not pretending, but that's not really pretending. You're actually doing market research. So doing market research is helpful for translators, and saying that you are doing market research is as well.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
It's not a question, it's just a thought from me that it's a good idea to use the same approach with anyone with any client, with any prospect you communicate with on the internet or on fairs, anyway.
Definitely.
So
there's also a good way that that you can approach companies where you have the feeling, oh my gosh, they already have great translations, and of course they're not going to need me. If you still want to get in touch with them, do that and ask them who did that awesome translation. You want to hook up with that translator to learn from them. Who knows, maybe you'll find out that that person retired, or that that person is no longer available, or they were too expensive, or they were hard to work with, even though they, you know, brought them great results. It's always a good way to get in touch with people by telling them that they did something great. And even if that doing something great is that they made the right decision for the right translator. And you might find somebody that you can network with and whom you can learn from.
Nice synergy. Okay, guys, I think we have to wrap it up, right? We have not answered a lot of questions, but I think we will go through them after the webinar anyway. If there are some of them that we really enjoy, I will anyway write a takeaways article after this. Tanya will help me based on what Tanya told, so you can also read it in text some days after this. Tanya, can you also, we will also share your presentation, I guess. Is it okay, right? The one in the beginning. And I will also ask you to leave your opinion on our forum. Well, anyway, thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, Tanya. I think that was really exciting. You see still 100 people still listening to us and watching us. It's a really good indicator of how useful it was.
Yeah, I really hope it was useful for you guys. And if you have any questions, no later than with the show notes, you will have the links to all my different channels. Please do get in touch. And I really, really hope that you enjoyed this. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day. For some of you, it's already very late, like for Vova. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you next Thursday. And stay tuned. Bye, Tanya. Bye, everyone.
Bye.